This is Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions with Alistair Lynch, Tom Rockcliffe and Dylan Leach.
Let's call it now. It's over. Collingwood done. Thank you very much. Premiership hangover? No, just one-hit wonders. But what beautiful one-hit wonders they were. You know, think like the My Sharono by the Knack or Mumbo No. 5 by Lou Bega. Those 2023 Pies will always be in high rotation when it comes to classic hits on the dance floor. But their follow-up single in the year 2024, it just doesn't have what the first one did. Their old stuff is better than their new stuff. The winless Pies head to Brisbane to face the winless Lions on Easter Thursday night. It'll be a beauty. Meanwhile, we're told in the entertainment business that there's a line that can't be crossed. Apparently, that's not the case for boundary umpires this weekend. To quote Brian Taylor, that was out of bounds. Much will be said about 2-metre Peter Wright's bump on Harry Cunningham. Fair to say 2-metre Peter will be 4-week suspension, Peter. We record this on a Tuesday morning, so by the time you've listened, it's probably been all said and done. It's early in the season and the prospect of an all-Sydney grand final. Swans v Giants. Could that be real? Could you imagine that? Some are winless, some have a few wins, some are looking good. Some are too early to tell. Hello and welcome to AFL Unpopular Opinions here on Ned's. My name is Dylan Leach. I'll stick with that Collingwood judgment. Save your receipts, Magpie fans. Joining me as always, a man who showed both Dustin Martin and especially Josh Caddy what the meaning of 50 metres is. One day in Adelaide back in 2020, it's former Lions and Port ball magnet and Supercoach captain for everyone, Tom Rockcliffe.
Yes, Dylan, thanks for having me. Entertaining weekend of football. We learned a little bit about a few teams, but there's still plenty to be learned and see where everyone sits after a few more rounds, I think. Now,
we have a notable absence this week, and that's through the fault of technology. Alistair Lynch is in the land of the Devils. He's down in Tassie. He was very excited about Jack McVeigh's three-pointer on the last 8 seconds on his beloved Jack Jumpers. And now the Devils are in town, and I think he's just spreading the good word of all things Devils down in Tassie. We tried to get him there, but the dial-up internet here at Ned's, I think the internet in Tassie's fine. But
I think it was in Tasmania. They've turned the 3G network off, haven't they? And they haven't quite upgraded yet, Tasmania. So they've had their election. All their resources were thrown into that. And Lynchy, unfortunately, we couldn't get him up today.
But they count the votes with pencil and paper.
No,
they manually count the votes.
Technology is great when it works, but as we know, that it does, sometimes lets you down. Unfortunately, that's what's happened to us this morning, but we'll push on without him.
There's no government in Tassie right now. There's a hung poll, but that's what happens. There's no one to make the decision. No one. Your uncle.
Well, he's claimed it almost, hasn't he? I think Labor conceded, even though they could still win. But interesting.
We'll get to state election talk later in the program. So it's just you and me. Yeah, we'll get Acker on to talk politics. That would be good. Or if you want his views, just watch Sky News after 6 p.m. every night. It's just you and me for now, but we'll get through a normal show. Ryan will join us for the snapshot. He'll have a chat with you, but we'll let Ryan stick around, just like old times, really.
Hang around.
He can shoot the breeze with us as we give our unpopular opinions. And as we were talking to Lynchy before we couldn't really get him on the show, the Tassie Devils, 170,000 members already.
Yeah, incredible. And I think you said in 45 countries. So it's spread like wildfire and they've done well. I think they put a video up the other day with the voice of the Tasmanian Devil from Warner Brothers. Is it Warner Brothers?
Yeah, Warner Brothers, yes.
The original voice. So he put a video up as well and it's spread like wildfire. So you can see that the team wants to come in and there's massive support behind it.
Did you read the story that someone at Warner Brothers didn't actually realise the Tassie Devil was an actual creature and just thought it was a made-up character as part of the Looney Tunes family?
I did see that. Quite incredible.
Had to Google the Tasmanian Devil was actually
that's
real.
what got them over the line in the end. They worked out that it was actually real, so they were like, well, yeah, of course you can use it.
Okay, fair enough. He's native to your island. Tom, good entertaining weekend of footy. Pretty good games all round. No, I wouldn't say a shocking game. Some teams put up good performances, others didn't. There was plenty to get around. But what's your unpopular take from the weekend in the spirit of this program? We'll get to Collingwood talk later.
My unpopular opinion, and I'm probably only brave enough to say it because Lynchy's not here, but it's more about Hawthorn. But I think more teams is going to cause more of the lopsided games, and the rebuilds are going to take longer. I think we should have stayed at 16 to keep 16 teams in the competition to keep the depth there, which is going to be
about to get to 19,
which is very unpopular. But I think my unpopular opinion for the week is that Hawthorn's rebuild is a bit of a myth. I look at their team on the weekend. I look what they did in the off season. Sam Mitchell's third year. I don't think they're improving. Like, why would you bring Jack Gunston back? He struggled at Brisbane in a premiership contending team, so he had a lot of entries inside 50. He's going to struggle this year. I look at across the board at that team that played on the weekend, and I'm not sure that there's many premiership players in it or who's going to be there in the next premiership. They're not as young as what you think they are. They've got older players in that team. Frost, Sicily, Carl Amon came across, a really good player, but who's going to be there? Marbio Chol has come in as well. Is he going to help them elevate to a premiership? I don't think so. I'm not sure where they're at.
It's interesting because towards the end of last year, Hawthorn were reasonably competitive. They took some big scalps. Obviously, they beat Collingwood and Brisbane. They weren't. Everyone thought they were going to be belted last year. They managed to be pretty much in most of the games they played. I think they covered the line most weeks as well from a betting perspective. So, did they rest on their laurels? Was it a bit of a false dawn last year that there was something in this side? Because you are right. I saw a bit of Saturday's game and they were just playing chippy, hands off.
Try and play keepings off,
where surely if you're a Hawthorn supporter, you would rather them lose by, it's one of those classic cases, well, let's lose by 10 goals trying, not 10 goals chipping. And Melbourne thumped them anyway.
That's the thing. You watch every coach that's come in, particularly Paul Roos, we know he comes in with this team defence. Ross Lyon does the same. Sam Mitchell took over and it was all out attack for Hawthorn, which was great. It was great to see. Now they've shifted away from that and playing this keepings off brand of footy. So when they first started, they wanted to kick over 100, 120 points every week. They're never going to kick 120 points the way they played on the weekend.
No, absolutely not.
So I think they're a bit confused with the way they want to play. So for me, Hawthorn's rebuild is not going to plan.
Because they were pretty attacking in the first match against Essendon, but they just kicked themselves out of the game. Yeah. So are they just
I'm just not sold on them. And back to my other point that the depth's not there to have 19, 20 teams in the competition. West Coast are so far off it as well. You watch them. Yes. So that's what happens when you bring two extra teams in. We've seen it took so long for the competition to get back to a level where Gold Coast and the Giants came in that it was a bit more even, but North Melbourne have been down the bottom for so long. West Coast, Hawthorn, it takes so long for teams to recover. We bring another two teams in. So my unpopular opinion, I think, will be very unpopular.
I think it will be. You're probably glad that a certain Taswegian is not down on the line here. He may. You wouldn't be the first Port Adelaide player that he's thrown a few swings at.
Well,
that's for
I think he'd jump through the screen. But what about you? What's your unpopular opinion for the week?
Actually, before I will get back to yours, but mine unpopular opinion is a bit more of an off-field thing, and I just know that's coming, and I'm really worried because right now, Tom, there's too many footballers appearing to have a life outside of the game. Digital teams from clubs producing very entertaining and engaging content, and even more daunting, players actually giving opinions on what they actually think during and after games. And I'm not against that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm all for it. I love everything about it. I want to see more of it, but I know what's coming. And I think you do too, because right now as players show personality and tell us what they think, as clubs produce funny stuff on social media, right now a club media manager, senior football writer or pundit at one of the daily rags or coach is getting ready to put a stop to this once and for all. Now on Saturday night, how good was Tom Papley?
Brilliant.
During and post-game, even Isaac Heaney. What did he say to Cameron Ling on the boundary line? He said, they're trying to get after us. It's off the ball. We're just worried about the ball. We'll keep being hard in the contest and get the job done. Brilliant. You actually want to hear that. I'm sure Alistair, who's not here, but he's a boundary rider, he would have killed to have someone say that.
Exactly.
Walking down. And then after the game, Papley doubles down in the rooms. He says, they gave it to us. Brad Scott said they want to have the Essendon edge. Peter Wright took it a bit too far, but that's footy and you move on from it. That was music to the ears. Everyone delighted to hear it. And then on Sunday, you see something fun on social media. So the Bulldogs post the clip of Dimmer saying, I hate coming here. I don't want, about Marvel, but made it about Ballarat. Now, that's good fun. Doesn't quite make up for the fact they gave my mate Danny the boot from writing the banners, but it's a start. And, of course, the Giants every week are producing really, GWS.
Great content,
streets ahead on the field at the moment, but also off the field. And to top it off, on the weekend we saw Collingwood players going to a Grand Prix event with their partners the night before a game. Not drinking, And given Jack Ginnivan sat by himself in a vacant corporate box to watch one race drinking water, that was frowned upon. So
went on a flag.
But to think that it impacts performance is ridiculous. So, and even like Bailey Smith was at Albert Park on Sunday, just enjoying himself at the Grand Prix, not watching his team play in Ballarat because he was injured. But we all know it's coming. It can't last because the fun police is rife in football. Right now, as we record this podcast, a media manager, commentator, coach is planning to ruin this golden age for everyone. I wouldn't rule out someone at the Swans having a chat with Tom Papley this week, just for daring to say something interesting. There's going to be a middle manager at GWS or a coach saying, the moment we start losing, you can't be entertaining on social media. And there may be, once they lose a game, certain footy shows will be putting the blowtorch on a player for showing some personality. So all I've got to say is enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. It's great to see personality. It's what we all scream for. You get to see a different side of players. But you're right, the media managers, footy managers, coaches are going to want to stamp it out and try and reduce the comments. But we want more access to players like the American sports, and they're honest and they're brutal, and it's great. And next time they play each other, I can't wait for the next time Essendon play Sydney. It's going to be on at Etihad or the MCG, wherever they play. So I'm really looking forward to it, and the more of it, the better for me.
Exactly. Did it ever happen to you in your career? Like you were playing at Brisbane and they weren't successful, for lack of a better description, or Port, or you were a bit of a profile when you played at Port, and Port were playing good footy. You had a bit of personality. I seem to recall you had the Rockcliffe Challenge on the Brisbane Lions digital website, and you had spots on the footy show, you were on the panel and that sort of thing back in the day. Was there ever times when the coaches and media were like, hey, Tom, pull it in? I
got myself into trouble a couple of times. That was just through sheer stupidity on my behalf a couple of times. But I always try to be myself, and it's probably the reason I have the jobs that I do now in footy media. Probably the reason I do this, the reason I'm on Triple M, is because I've got an opinion, like to have fun. And I think if you do that and you can be yourself to some degree, obviously you don't want to give away game plan, etc., and inside information that's going to affect the outcome of games. But if you can be yourself and give a fair assessment and then back it up is the most important thing, which I think Sydney, Tom Papley's been able to back it up for a number of years, and other guys as well. So I've got no issue with it. And the more of it we see, the better. I think there's nothing worse than going to a press conference and seeing straight down the line answers that give you nothing, I think even Lachie Neale, he was fantastic, and then they wrote stories about it, and Chris Fagan came out and was attacking the media for writing the stories, but it was great content.
It was a good story.
He gave inside information about what happened in the team review. They weren't tough enough. They needed to do this. They needed to do that. It's great. That's what punters want to hear. That's what team supporters want to hear. So the more of it, the better. It's
just truthful.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's telling the truth, and that's what we crave. And you're right. The cliche stuff's boring, but Chris Fagan probably needs to pull his head in and go, Lachie
You can
Neale.
tell him that.
I'll tell him that. I'll go tell him that. Just say, Chris, Lachie was just telling it like it is about why you gave up big lead in a match. Your fans appreciate this. People appreciate it. But even coaches are being honest now. And it's great. Like Ross Lyon, prior to the Collingwood St Kilda game, he said, this is how we're going to beat Collingwood. This is what we plan to do. And he implemented it. Ross never would have done that 10 years ago.
No, I think it's fantastic. And that's what everyone wants. That's the more content we want. We don't want the straight down the line. We want to find out how you're going to beat an opposition. What are you going to do differently this week? And that's a perfect example. Ross Lyon coming out and saying, this is what we're going to do against Collingwood. Collingwood know it's coming anyway. Generally speaking, you've done all your research on the opposition during the week, so you know 90% of how they're going to play. They might tweak, say, 10% or something like that. But, yeah, fantastic for the punters.
Yeah, and just the audience in general. It's not just for the game and the coverage of it, because there's a fair bit of it. There's no... Look, I'm not going to lie, we're in a pretty crowded marketplace. Our podcast does not stand out from a lot of others.
No, that's right.
But... yeah, the more honesty, and you're all right, you see it in US sports and it's great. Yeah. And there's a lot of people in AFL who look up to the US and are obsessed with what the NFL does or what Major League Baseball and the NBA does. And the one thing is the players are very truthful.
Yeah.
But more of it. But right now there's a middle manager. There is someone who's going to just put the hammer down, and we're going to be back to boring within...
2-3 weeks.
2-3 weeks. 2-3 weeks. Leave it 2-3 weeks and be back to just boring as shitless.
Yep.
Yeah, no more fun.
Yeah.
Can't have fun. Football's serious.
Get out there and say what you want for the next couple of weeks.
It's an amnesty.
While you can.
Yeah. Say what you like. Let loose. It doesn't matter what you're saying. They're going to crack down on it. Now, the elephant in the room, well, not elephant, but it stands out, is obviously Collingwood.
Yep.
0-3. 2 rounds in. Go figure. It's still confusing as hell. I reckon it's over. I think I am of the view that they don't have a premiership hangover. I just think they've run out of luck because the past 2 seasons, 22 and 23, Collingwood were winning miracle games week after week. And I'm not saying that was you're just lucky. I mean, that is wonderful luck. That is good luck happening to a good team who deserve the good luck. It's Tats Lotto-like luck.
Yeah.
But it's easier to figure. Surely it's easier to figure out a team that wins close games more often than a team that just dominates and belts teams week on week. And if Alistair was here in his era at the Lions when they were dominating in the early 2000s, they belted teams week in. They were impossible to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, the only loss I can think that stands out at the time, that was very rare, was the time Chris Judd came out of his shell in his second year as a player and just beat them single-handedly. But they were just winning. They would just win for fun. Same with Geelong in the 2007 to 11 era. Same with Hawthorn. Same with Richmond. They would just win. You weren't getting that with Collingwood. They won all their finals by under a kick.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I defend them. I don't think they have a premiership hangover either, and I did that after round 0, and I still stand by that. I don't think that's a hangover. It's a good point you make. I think it's more they're emotionally shot. You think about being up and winning all those close games, and you're on the edge of your seat. Carlton are going through it a little bit at the moment as well, winning all those close ones. You speak to their supporters, they're on edge the whole time. So if you're out there playing or a part of the coaching staff, you're on edge because it's so close and it's so tense. So you're emotionally invested so much in, and they've gone through that for 2 years, and now they might be just so emotionally drained that it's so hard to get up for. They've been to the pinnacle last year. They've worked hard through the off-season, pre-season. Unfortunately, it's not going their way at the moment. They may have mental fatigue more so than anything else.
That's an interesting point you talk about, the emotional fatigue, because to go back to what I was saying earlier, with the likes of Brisbane, Geelong, Hawthorn, Richmond, they would win for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be 6 goals down, but they were going to win by 4 goals. They just knew how to win. Their fans would go, I can vouch for this, you would go to the footy, how much we're winning by today.
Yeah.
Wonderful feeling to have.
Yeah, amazing.
I'd love to have that again. I don't think Collingwood was having that.
No.
Collingwood every week were a chance of losing it, and then something ridiculous would happen. From Jamie Elliott to that Carlton, the end of 22 was insane for them.
Yeah, that's right.
The final series last year was insane for them. You're right. It would get to you, and how do you get better than winning a premiership from all those close games? How do you
That's right. You've got to find different ways to do it. There is a bit of chitter-chatter about Graham Wright going away and a bit of instability in the footy department. No one really knows that unless you're inside the 4 walls. So I would put it down just to emotional fatigue and more so than anything. And that's what happens. You see acts in games. It's players not trying. When players look like they're not trying, they're still trying their hardest. Unfortunately, they're slightly off mentally, so it looks like they're not trying.
There's been a lot said. An article today in The Age, John Perrick writes about the likes of De Goey, Pendlebury, Crisp, Sidebottom, Mitchell, so the more veteran Collingwood players, and they've sort of dropped off the perch. When you've been playing that long and you win a premiership, particularly if you're like a Scott Pendlebury, does the hunger kind of... You would feel pretty satisfied. I wouldn't say you might still be hungry. You might have room for a bit of dessert, but you could easily skip dessert if you know what I'm saying. Yeah,
I think so. And I think Pendlebury, the way he prepares and performs his roles, I don't think there's any issue with that whatsoever. But I think you get to a point, and it happens to everyone, where you become slightly slower. And Pendlebury's never been a quick player or anything, but he's always had time and space, and I think that's starting to close down on him a little bit. That time is certainly becoming less. Again, we'll have to revisit it after, say, round 10 to see if it's real or if it's just the first 3 weeks trying to find a bit of form. And you can go through patches where you're not at your absolute best. So I think... I think we need more time, but I think they'll struggle to win the premiership this year.
Yeah, I do too. I can't see them going back to back. They might make finals, but it's
Scrape in and just making up the numbers.
Yeah, and it's not. I don't think that's an insult
No.
as well, that they can't go back to back. The way they won that premiership, built on pretty much those 2 seasons,
Yeah.
22 and 23, that is the most wonderful, exciting luck roller coaster you can ever have.
Yeah.
Collingwood fans would have loved every minute. Well, I don't know if they loved every minute of it, but they will look back, as I mentioned with that one-hit wonder analogy, they will look back on that so fondly. It doesn't matter that they didn't win another one. And we've been spoilt this century with dominant teams. Like we've had teams, we've had Brisbane, Richmond, Collingwood, not Collingwood, Richmond, Geelong, Hawthorn dominate. So we've had a few three-peats already though. Things like that.
A few strong eras, that's for sure.
It's okay if they just win one.
Yeah, it's fine.
And it doesn't mean any less of that team.
No, West Coast the same in 2018. They won the one and then dropped away rapidly.
Well, they dropped away way too rapidly in the case of West Coast. I don't know if Collingwood's going to end up like that.
No,
but
I think they will.
I don't think it's an insult on what they did if they don't go back to back. And it was luck, and it was wonderful luck.
Yeah.
And anyone would kill to have that luck. And it doesn't make it any less of a great premiership because they won one of the great grand finals.
Well, you think about it as well. The prelim the year before, they lose by a couple of points. So they're effectively gone through the whole 2 years of just falling in, and the emotional drain, the emotional toll, I think, is what's got them.
Yeah. What about Brisbane? So they've had the week off. Nothing really has changed because obviously they've had the bye, but we saw in the Carlton game they dominated in the first half. We saw in the Fremantle game they dominated in the first quarter. So there's signs that Brisbane still have a bit of the edge. I know losing Kitty Coleman was tough on them. I know missing Lachie Neale was a pretty significant, obviously. I would be more confident in backing Brisbane to win on Thursday night than Collingwood. So I would definitely see the 0-4 Pies, which... Boy, that'll get people talking. But
like, I think Sydney were 0-6 and made finals. If they go 0-4, which I think they will, I think Brisbane's best is still very, very good. As you spoke about, the first half against Carlton, it was Brisbane by how far. Carlton found a way to get back into it. The first 10 minutes, they've put 4 or 5 on Fremantle like that. And I think their best, they can score really fast. They've just got to find the right balance. When an opposition club comes at them, they can't play that fast. They've just got to learn to defend and slow it down a little bit, take the sting out of the game for a couple of minutes, which I think they would have trained over the last couple of weeks. I think they'll be fine.
So looking forward to Thursday night.
Should be a ripper.
Indeed. Any other things stand out for the weekend? Any other sort of hot takes? Go on. You got the floor is yours. Alistair's not here. You can just say whatever you like. I'm not going to clamp down on what you say.
I thought North's first half were good. Fremantle were impressive. Adelaide Crows are the disappointing one for me. I had them as a big improver. Matty Nix, he's been there 5 years, signed a 2-year extension and a start 0-2. They've got to go over and play Fremantle this week over there. And then I think they have the Demons the week after, which... they could possibly be 0-4 when they're supposed to be improving and right thereabouts. They're the goalpost away from finals last year, so they were on the right path. They were terrible against the Gold Coast for the first 3 quarters in round 1. And then on the weekend against Geelong, they just weren't up to it. They're very good at home, but they just couldn't get the job done. So they're probably the biggest disappointment out of the weekend for me.
Big game against Fremantle on Good Friday. Intriguing match, actually. If the Crows can win away in Perth, I mean, Fremantle 2-0, so they could be 3-0, the Dockers.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
We could be talking flag medal. All right, this is Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. Dylan and Tom Rockcliffe with you this week. Alistair Lynch is a late scratching due to technology. Speaking of technology, Ryan, we're going to try the dial-up in the Sunshine Coast because that's where Ryan is, and we're going to do... the snapshot.
All the betting trends you need to know from the world of footy. This is the Snapshot.
Rocky, plenty to dive into this week on the back of another big weekend of footy. Plenty of blowouts that we saw over the weekend. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, interesting round of footy. We've still got a bit to learn. I think we were both pretty bullish on the Adelaide Crows. They've been disappointing to start the season, their first couple of games. St Kilda were good. On Thursday night, Fremantle again won with a a few injuries about. Melbourne, impressive. Hawthorn, your boys were very disappointing, I thought. But I think, again, Sydney stamped their authority, and the Giants, again, they took on West Coast. But the Sydney teams, again, I think are a step above the competition in the early part of the season.
Yeah, it does feel like the Sydney teams are absolutely flying right now. We won't talk too much about the Hawks just yet. One team you did just mention, though, is St Kilda. So let's go all the way back to Thursday night. We touched on the Saints last week after that close loss to Geelong. And I think I said I thought they were the better team on the night. And we've seen that translate into a massive win over the reigning premiers. Defensively, we know that St Kilda set up really nicely behind the ball. Last year, dead last in fewest points allowed. And this year, that's continued. They ranked third. What's changed, though, is I think in only 2 games, it's a small sample size, but we're seeing a lot more run through the midfield. Wangani Malira, 32 touches against the Pies. Jack Steele was outstanding as well. Mitch Owens getting a lot of the footy. Just felt like they really ran the Pies off their feet. Surprisingly, from a betting standpoint, you can get $2.50 for St Kilda to make the 8, $6 for them to finish top 4. To me, I think that's really good value. Rocky, do you think that the Saints are marching into the top 8 contention again this year?
Yeah, I think they'll be thereabouts. Again, they're going to be in that logjam from sort of 6 to 12 or however it plays out. But I think they're good enough too. You spoke about it. Good teams are built off defence, and St Kilda's defence is really strong. We've spoken about that, but if they can add that element of the run and carry, which you spoke about, off half-back through the corridor, it'll be interesting to see this week at Marvel how their offence stacks up, because that'll tell us how good their ball movement is. It's a fast-moving ground. Their defence, if their defence stacks up and then they can shift the footy, get the overlap, I think they'll tick a lot of boxes and be marching, as you said, because if they can get Essendon done this weekend, then they've got Richmond the week after. It sort of builds a bit of momentum, then a really good test against the Giants. So they've got an opportunity in the next couple of weeks. We'll find out a lot more about them. It's probably too early to tell, but they've ticked all the right boxes. As you said, probably should have beaten Geelong down there, which is a massive win if you can win down there. But I think we'll find out a lot once they've played at Marvel Stadium.
It is hard to get carried away with a team that's had such a poor history like St Kilda, but I do think they are one of the most dangerous teams. And as you sort of just said then, they set up so nicely behind the ball and almost frustrated Collingwood on attack last week, really took away a lot of the options, been really strong around the clearances as well. Another game I want to dive into coming up in round 3 is your old mob, Port Adelaide, taking on Melbourne in what should be a bit of a cracker on Saturday night under the lights of the Adelaide Oval. Very close game between these two last year. Port ran out 4-point winners in round 10. Very low scoring game that one was. Obviously, the midfield's going to be the big talking point here. Clayton Oliver's back in form. Great to see him back on the footy field. Petrarca's doing his usual thing. And then on the other side, Zach Butters and Rosie getting plenty of the footy as well. Rocky, if you're having a bet on this game, who do you think you'd be pretty keen on in the disposal markets?
Disposal markets, I think it'll be a shootout. So I think they'll all get touches. I think Viney normally goes to a Wines or something like that. Good matchup. I think Wines is starting to find his best form in that midfield as well through his clearances. I think Butters will get plenty of the footy. Rosie will get plenty of it. I think they all will. I don't think there'll be too much defence going on from either midfield group. They'll shake hands at the start. It depends who Willem Drew goes to. He probably goes to Oliver. Petrarca has that flexibility to drift forward a bit more. So Oliver might be a bit of a watch. He may not have the impact that he's had in the past. We know the jobs that Willem Drew can do. But disposals markets, I'd be pretty confident in majority of them having 25 plus. I think I'd be leaning towards Port Adelaide in the game just because of Melbourne's lack of defence now. We know how potent Port Adelaide's forward half are with a few injuries for Melbourne. They're going to be hard to stop those Port Adelaide forwards. Port have got to take their opportunities when they go inside 50, but the game is going to be won in the middle of the ground, as you touched on. Max Gawn will give Melbourne a good look, but on the other side as well, Port Adelaide, I think they're getting their hands on the footy. Horn Francis, does he come back in as well? So it's an exciting game and probably almost a game of the round, if not the game of the round, 3rd versus 4th.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think from a betting perspective anyway, it's worth noting that Petrarca and Oliver have both averaged close to 27 disposals in their last 5 games against Port. But it is going to be very interesting to see how Melbourne plays without potentially Stephen May and Jake Lever, 2 really big outs. We also saw Melbourne against Hawthorn last week. The Hawks spent way too much time focusing on Clayton Oliver, and that cost them about 5 goals in that first term. So I'm sure Melbourne will be keen to avoid that silly mistake as well. Quickly, I want to go a bit rapid fire here because there's been a handful of players that are yet to fire, particularly in the Coleman market. Toby Green is the name that leaps off the page. 66 goals last year, 4th in the Coleman chase. He's only kicked 2 so far. We spoke about GWS plenty last week, but the Giants are on the bye this week, come back in round 4 to face the Gold Coast Suns. Do you think Toby's going to be a threat in the Coleman this year? Or is there too many weapons up forward there at the Giants?
Yeah, I'm not sure he will be, will he? Because we've seen him just take games apart, kick major goals, but they've got a few different avenues to goal now. So Toby just hasn't found the form that he had previously. For a Coleman race, I don't think he's any chance probably to finish top 5 at all now. So with Hogan and those guys down in that forward half, Hogan's obviously in really good form as well, but Toby Green, a little bit slow start to the season.
The other name is Taylor Walker. So he was 2nd in the Coleman chase last year, 76 goals. He's only kicked a pair himself as well. Looked like he might be in for a big night against the Cats, but then just sort of didn't do much in that second half. The Crows, as you said at the start, take on Freo this week in Perth. Massive game for them. Tex kicked 4 against the Dockers in round 4 last year. Do you think we're going to get to see Tex start to heat up in these next few weeks?
Well, he's carrying that back niggle, isn't he? So he didn't play the first game and then only 2 on the weekend and a couple of contests where he looks like he could have bent over to pick it up. He decided to kick it off the ground. So I reckon he's still carrying the back a little bit. So he might be good for another 1 or 2. But, yeah, I think I don't think his body's 100% at the moment. So until he can get that body back to where it needs to be, I don't think we'll see Big Texan kicking those big bags.
The other big forward who's now out with an injury is Oscar Allen, which is a big loss for West Coast for the next couple of months with minor knee surgery. Look, if you're actually game enough to bet on West Coast players to kick goals, do you think we should be looking at the likes of Yeo, Waterman, Jack Darling was their second leading goal kicker last year? Those 3 names are the ones that punters would want to be focusing on?
Oh, I wouldn't be brave to put any bets on West Coast players kicking goals. I think they're a long way off. They're so hard to gauge. And 43 points on the weekend, round 1. There's 70 points against Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide went inside 53 times for 40 scores. Had they kicked more goals, I don't think West Coast would have got anywhere near 70 points. So you'd be a brave punter out there if you were backing any West Coast players to kick goals.
West Coast take on the Dogs on Sunday at Marvel. They actually beat the Western Bulldogs late last year, so maybe that's a danger game for the Dogs. No, probably not, but it's probably going to be a big blowout. But
Ryan and Rocky are cooking up another multi. Surely it gets up this week.
Let's move on to the multi. Very stiff last week, Rocky. Melbourne's a cover versus Hawthorn. We got the tick there. The Swans 1-39. We got the tick there, but unfortunately, Big Benny Brown didn't kick 2 goals for us.
He didn't kick any. I think he had a set shot on the siren for about his second shot on goal. I think he kicked a point. Ben Brown, never again list for me.
He's on the no bet list. There we go. This week, we're going big. We haven't even got one up this year, but we've decided to go for double figures. Look, I'm going to start us on Thursday night. I'm going Collingwood plus 16.5 against Brisbane. I just think teams having a bye this early in the year could prove a bit of a hindrance for the Lions. And I also think the Pies getting away from the MCG takes a little bit of the pressure off there. I just think that's a big line between 2 clubs that are off to very slow starts. And I also thought the Pies started to show some signs late against St Kilda last week. So there is something for them to build on. Rocky, you lead us off in the next leg. Who have you got?
Yeah, we're going to Good Friday, North Melbourne versus Carlton. I think Harry Sheezel for 30 plus at $1.92. I think he's a ball magnet. I'm not sure that Carlton will put a lot of time and effort into him off half-back. I think he'll find plenty of footy, and if North are to be anywhere in that game, he's going to have to, and he just finds a way to get touches. So I think he is a good bet at 30 plus.
Very good value as well. And you've also included another player to kick 2 goals. You're sticking fat with the player markets.
Yeah, I am. I'm going the player markets. I'm trying to get the value for us. So Sunday afternoon, the Western Bulldogs take on West Coast at Marvel Stadium. I'm going the Bont 2+. I think he hits the scoreboard as good as any midfielder in the competition, and I think he'll feast on the West Coast Eagles. I almost put him down for 3 votes. I think he'll have a day out, potentially kick even more than 2. I think he's good for 3 or 4 on the weekend. So 2+ at some good value there as well at $2.35.
Very juicy. Lastly, I've included Melbourne plus 14.5. I just think they've had a tougher start to the year. I know they've got those injuries, but a bit more battle tested than Port Adelaide right now. And I think they're starting to figure some things out up forward. So I like the plus 14.5 line about Melbourne. So just to recap, we've got Collingwood plus 16.5 against Brisbane on Thursday night. I've gone Melbourne to cover against Port Adelaide. Rocky, you've got the 2+ goals and Harry Sheezel 30+ disposals. Wrap all that up, we got $16. Pretty good value.
Very good value, very juicy, and it'll be a nice way to start our first win for the season.
That one is, of course, available on the Neds app in the special section. Great segment as always, Rocky. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Well done, Ryan.
It's time to take a walk down memory lane with the man who was everyone's one-time Supercoach captain. This is Rocky's Reminiscing.
A late inclusion into this week's show. We were going to do Lynchy's locker room, but, Lynchy's 3G in Tasmania and dial-up internet wasn't quite what we were after. But Rocky's Reminiscing. And it's a good week to do Rocky's Reminiscing because obviously the big game on Thursday night, Brisbane versus Collingwood at the Gabba. But, of course, in 2009, a very young man by the name of Thomas Rockliff made his debut in a Brisbane-Collingwood game.
Yeah, certainly did at the MCG. So I played another milestone. I think my 100th was against Collingwood as well. We beat them in 2014 down there. I think I had close to 40 that day. So that was a much better day than...
Close to 40. How many did you have?
I think it was high 30s or maybe...
What was it? Come on, you know the exact number.
No, I'm not sure.
Oh,
I'm not sure. We had a good win, though, at the MCG. We didn't beat Collingwood often.
You didn't win at the MCG often.
At the MCG. So that was good, but going back to 2009, to make your debut, Country Victorian, to be able to do it at the MCG was quite incredible. Brisbane were going quite well at the time, Collingwood as well, 60-odd thousand. Simon Black, his 250th game as well, so a massive debut.
That's fascinating. So you and I are about the same age, so you would have been like 18, 19 at that time. You're making your debut at the MCG and your teammate is Simon Black, of all people, playing in a milestone game. What is that like for someone just being in the rooms? It's like, what goes in your head? You're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
How did I end up here?
Well, you get used to it, obviously.
Yeah.
When I debuted, it was later in the year, but what you're saying is right. You walk into the club and you've got club legends, Michael Voss as a coach, Luke Power, Jonathan Brown, Simon Black, Daniel Bradshaw, all these great players from the past, Tim Notting, premiership players, and you're just like blown away. You're like, wow, I don't fit in here, particularly the way I looked. I was a bit overweight, chubby, had a bit of work to do, but yeah, to be able to play in that game and walk, you obviously watch videos of Blackie's highlights throughout building up. It's just incredible what he was able to do. He's probably still underrated for what he accomplished in the game. I still think he probably should have won more All-Australians, but I think he won a Brownlow and he may have been second 3 times, definitely twice, and maybe 3 times that he could have. So he could have been a 3 or 4 time Brownlow medalist through an era where there were so many good players in that team. He just had time and space and his ability to in traffic. He wasn't quick. He didn't set the world on fire with his pace, but his ball use was exceptional. So that was a really great experience. My first kick, I remember coming out. Jack Redden, one of my good mates, I think we lived together at the time, kicked the footy to me. About 35 out, set shot, didn't make the distance, so I didn't join the club of first kick, first goal.
How far into the game was it?
Probably halfway through the first quarter or later on. I only touched it 5 times for the game.
But when you get your first touch in an AFL game, does it just feel like a massive monkey on your back?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've put the jumper on, I've run through the banner, I've done the warm up, but when you finally get your hands on the ball, it's like, now I'm in.
Yeah, and then the nerves kick in. You start to go back and go through your routine to try and have a set shot at the MCG. It's just like, wow, this is it all starts to get to you. But the biggest talking point out of that game, believe it or not, wasn't my debut or Simon Black's 250th. Collingwood went on to win the game. It was the first goal kicker.
Right.
It was the first goal kicker. So I think Daniel Bradshaw was a late out.
Yep.
And I got the opportunity to come in as a forward. Daniel Merritt, who was a fullback, got swung around and obviously trained there all week because we thought it was an opportunity. So obviously being in Brisbane at the Cooperoo facility, anyone can go and watch training.
Yep.
But he got backed in from, I think, 250 to 1 to kick the first goal into 16. And sure enough, somehow the ball ended up in his hands, running left foot towards the boundary, left foot snap along the ground, dribbles through, kicks the first goal.
Daniel Bradshaw.
No, Daniel Merritt.
Oh, Daniel Merritt. Sorry, Daniel Bradshaw was out. Yeah, Daniel Merritt.
So Daniel Merritt was the key forward, and he's kicked a left foot running towards the boundary, dribble along the ground, like a near impossible goal. I think if you gave him an opportunity to do it 100 times, he would only kick it that one time, and it came off. And I think there was a big inquiry, obviously, because of the money in the betting pools. But I think people just went and watched training and worked out that he was playing forward. We have our captains run in Melbourne.
Yeah.
People would have seen him as a forward. They're like, well, there's some value here. And that's when sports betting wasn't as big as what it is now.
Yeah, it would have raised a few eyebrows, no doubt.
But, quite incredible. So that was a big talking point out of the game and a debut that you never forget.
When what goes in the rooms when you're in your debut? So you get presented with your jumper. Did you get someone present you with a jumper? Or
Yeah, so the night before the game, Leon Harris, who was a famous 38, I think he played 180-odd games in jumper 38 for Fitzroy back in the day. He was my Vic Country coach through the 16 to 18, so I had a fair bit to do with him. He still works at the club now as a recruiter. He came in and just gave a spiel and our journey together, but spoke about what it meant to wear the jumper, etc. So that was a really special moment as well, to get that the night before. Trying to sleep, etc. is just a waste of time.
And you had your family and everything there.
Family, I think we got 20-odd tickets of people to come and watch that first game, and all your mates come down from Benalla, etc. like that. I think it was a Saturday night, and as I said, 60-odd thousand, Collingwood, massive game. Yeah, and then, in the change rooms before the game, you're just trying to you don't know what you're doing. Realistically, being on the road as well as a kid, I think we spent a couple of hours at the Jam Factory down there with the arcade games, etc., which you burn energy that way, and then by the time you get to the game, you're like, I've done that too much. So you've got to try and work out what works for you as best you can. But just a really humbling experience and one that you remember forever.
Well, that's one more game than I'll ever play, but you played, 206 in the end, so...
Yeah,
it's a pretty good career.
Well, 208 I think I finished with, but the last couple were sub. They don't really count. I think one I didn't even go on, and one I went on for 10 minutes.
Yeah. What a farewell match that was. All right, and you had your milestone, and the other one was a milestone match against Collingwood at the MCG. So then 100 games later, you got your milestone.
Yeah. So 100 games at the MCG 2014, exactly the same, and we were Collingwood were battling a bit, and we were as well. I think it was Justin Lepich's first year as coach, and found a way to win. And we had a pretty good night. We all feasted. I think me, Dane Zorko, and Pierce Hanley had some really good numbers that night.
Oh, excellent! Yes. There you go. Oh, very, very, very good. A rare Brisbane win at the MCG. They did it for you, Rock.
Yes, they got up and about for me.
But it's good to see the rivalry between Brisbane and Collingwood sort of reignite. They were certainly very big in the early 2000s, now that they've been played in recent grand finals. And if Leachy was here today, he was going to tell us some of the stories about Collingwood and Fitzroy back in the day, which were pretty legendary. Did you know, actually, Collingwood actually offered to merge with Fitzroy, and their offer was that they would just call their reserves Fitzroy. That was the offer.
That doesn't surprise me about
What
Collingwood.
An offer.
Yeah, Collingwood, it's all on their terms, but it's surprised that they were even in a position to merge. But, I mean, that's, they're an amazing
they also
club.
wanted Paul Roos at the time, and probably Alistair. I know they definitely made a few plays for Alistair, but no, we should look forward to Thursday night. And
It'll
of
be
course,
a ripping game.
You'll be in the commentary box with Simon.
No, I won't be. They're flying up Daisy Thomas. So Daisy Thomas and Simon Black will be the specials.
Daisy's replacing you?
Yes, he's taken my spot.
Wow.
So I've got the weekend off.
Oh, well. I won't be listening then. Stuff you. This is Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions.
You're listening to Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions.
Time to wrap up here on Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. A bit more of a scaled back edition today, but I thought we got through a pretty good program. Tom, I know you've been punted for Daisy Thomas on the Triple M commentary team this Thursday night, but what are you looking forward to this weekend? Are you going to go to the game?
No, I might. I haven't decided yet. I think, I might venture down there. I think it'll be a really good game, actually, as long as the rain stays away. It's Tuesday. It's been raining since Sunday here, and it's expected to rain for most of the week. But
question without notice. Is the game more intriguing that both teams are yet to win, or would it have been more intriguing if they both started unbeaten?
I think unbeaten would have been better. But it's still got an edge to it because of that reason. So I think if the two grand finals from last year were unbeaten heading into round 3, 3 or 4, whichever way you want to look at it.
Week 4, round 3,
it would have been an epic game. I think it's still going to be a sellout at the Gabba. And it should be a cracking contest.
Which, by the way, the Gabba is a perfect stadium and does not need a renovation. It's just
according to Queensland.
A complete perfect, Nick. But
the other game as well is Port Adelaide versus Melbourne.
Yes.
I want to see how they go. Melbourne, obviously, without a couple of defenders. Port, they were okay on the weekend. They didn't set the world on fire against Richmond. They did enough to win the game of footy. That'll be a really good game at Adelaide Oval as well.
Which reminds me, and I forgot to mention this last week, congratulations, Travis Boak, 350 games. Obviously, Boakey had a bit of an impact on your career and great teammate of yours.
Yeah, an absolute oversight for us not to mention that last week, but 350, absolute champion of the game, just gets the most out of himself, most professional player I ever played with, calming influence. He would do anything for you if you called him now and asked him for anything, he'd do it straight away. So, absolute gentleman and thoroughly deserved.
Heart and soul of the Port Adelaide Football Club. Port v Melbourne should be a cracking intriguing contest. I am looking forward to two things. Good Friday. I think North Melbourne v Carlton should be really interesting. I am of the view that North Melbourne is going to upset a top side this year. Yep. Now, we saw their first half last week. They were on. That was this is the sneak preview of future North Melbourne. And then it's probably one of those classic cases where a young team's a bit too in front. They don't know what to do. And the Marvel Stadium Good Friday game would be a great audition for North Melbourne, especially the significance of the game. And it's actually a genuinely wonderful fixture that they put on last year. I think they've got the teams right, North Melbourne and Carlton playing on Good Friday, because they're both in the vicinity of the Royal Children's Hospital, obviously with the Good Friday appeal and how they incorporate it. And I loved last year when they put up the banner and then the two teams did a guard of honour for the kids running through the banner. I thought that was sensational. And they do it so well. Yeah. And I agree with that. It's such a great fixture. And it doesn't matter about, obviously you want the game of football to be great, but spare me the crap of denying North Melbourne Good Friday because they're not playing well. It's genuinely a charity match. It's not. It's for 4 points, but it's about the kids. I actually think North could. I don't know if North will win, but I wouldn't be shocked if they upset. Okay. I just think they're the kind of team. They're at that stage where they're plucky, and they will pluck a win against a top side this year somewhere. Maybe it's a bit early this season, but they will eventually spoil the party for someone. The other one on the back end on the weekend is Hawthorn Geelong, because Tom Hawkins 350 game. So another milestone as well. Tom Hawkins, another dead set legend of footy and icon, and
they always play good games as well, no matter where they are. They've done that for the best part of a decade, probably longer.
There's never a dull moment when Hawthorn and Geelong play, and you would think Hawthorn may actually play attacking football and not try play keepings off the Cats, just for the sake of
take the game on.
Take it on, Hawthorn. Listen to us. Sam Mitchell, I know you're listening. I know you love the show.
Big listener of the show.
Big listener of the show. He goes, you're right. We were playing boring, chippy crap that really backfired on us.
Yeah, that's
right. He'll text me. He'll text me. While we're still talking about milestones, I forgot Brandon Ellis played his 250th game on.
Outstanding achievement as well.
Yeah, he's a fine player. He is one of the rare players that actually went to my high high school, Brandon
Right.
Ellis.
So you're no longer the most famous person from the high school.
No, Brandon's definitely the team of
Got
the
you covered.
Brandon is the captain of the Princess Hill Secondary College team of the century. He's definitely the captain. Who else would we have? Ange Christou,
Oh, yeah.
Vin Catoggio.
You've got some good
Got some,
players
yeah.
that come out
Well,
there.
my high school's even got a club owner.
Oh, right.
Dr. Jeffrey Edelstein.
Oh, there you go.
He owns the club. All right, let's wrap up here on Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. Before we do that, Tom, can you recap the multi that you and Ryan just did in the snapshot?
Yes, quickly recap it. North Melbourne versus Carlton. Harry Sheasel to have 30 plus. Marcus Bontempelli to kick 2+ against West Coast on the weekend as well. Brisbane Lions, Collingwood to cover at 16.5, plus 16.5 that is. Port Adelaide versus Melbourne, Melbourne to cover the line at plus 14.5. Tally that all up together, you get $16.28.
Oh, that's juicy.
Oh, very juicy. And you
That's
can find
very
that
juicy.
on the app as well.
On the
I
app
believe.
and in the Ned's Open Chats. Geez, 16.5 line for Collingwood. That's it's a bit harsh. I would have
Yeah.
thought it'd be a bit closer. There you go. And bookies, they don't rate them.
They don't rate
They
them.
must have listened to my editorial. They must have listened to my editorial. All right, this has been Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. Thank you, Tom.
No, thank
We
you,
got through
Dylan.
it together.
Yeah, see-
We used to do this.
Well, I don't think...
It used to just be you and me on a little video for a couple of
unpopular
minutes.
opinions,
Now we've
so-
done it as a podcast.
See you, Lynchy.
Lynchy? Oh, no, Lynchy will be back next
He'll be
week.
back.
He'll be back.
No, we need him back.
He'll need his internet as well. I think he'll send us a fax wanting to know how the show went. Ryan will be in studio with you. We'll have all our technical mumbo
back.
jumbo. If you are driving over Easter and if you're listening to this in the car, don't drive like a dickhead. And if
Hopefully
you're having
the
a
Easter
punt,
bunny comes.
if you're having a bet on the footy, do it in a responsible manner. That's all we ask. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening to Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. Enjoyed the podcasts? Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.